I'm going to talk about TOPSpro Enterprise and eTests Online. For those of you who don't know, it's one application. It's the same back-end database, but we have two different interfaces. TOPSpro Enterprise is used for accountability, so it's used by managers and teachers and administrators, whereas eTests Online is for administering the CASAS tests, and that's used by students. But they do share the same back-end database. So I'm just going to talk about where we've been in the last program year, where we're going in the new one, which obviously has a lot to do with WIOA, but not only about WIOA. Part of that will be testing on mobile devices. I'll explain what that's about, and WIOA interoperability. So where we've been. We've already been talking about the GED 2014, the HiSET, and the TAS. I'm going to skip ahead to a slide about that. Those were added in this program here. So as you can see, you can put in the sub-scores for all of these tests, the date they were taken, where they passed, and so on. So that information has been available since about the middle of this program year. We've added some utilities to make use of TE easier. So we have a batch insert and batch edit function now. So an example of using batch insert is say you've tested 30 students, and or maybe many more than that. But after testing, you go into a lister and you sort them by test score. Maybe you just want those that scored in a level A area. You could highlight all of those in the lister and then so you use a batch override when you're scanning and say all these students are ESL, so it gets populated automatically. Well, of course, what happens, 1% or 2% of the time is someone makes a mistake and they made all their ESL students ABE, so now they have to go in and rescan them all. So instead of doing that, you can use batch edit, and you can highlight all those students that were given the wrong program, and you can change that from ABE to ESL. And that's just one example of things you can do with batch edit. Another big change this year was adding servers and performance optimization. And what I mean by that is when you have concurrent students, they're all taking tests at the same time, and we have an online system that's used across the United States, there's going to be times where there's peak usage. And it's totally unpredictable. It's partly predictable, but it's not totally unpredictable because you have all the states using it, all the districts using it, all the sites, and so on. So you'll get these peaks that suddenly slow down the system for everyone. That's obviously not what we want, and we've done a lot of work on. It wasn't just adding servers to solve that kind of problem. It's a very unique kind of problem. We had the help of one of our board members who's here, Jim Olson, and pointing us to others in the industry, Pearson being the largest, and others. We found right away that we're not alone in this kind of problem. Everyone faces it, and you just have to learn about your own particular system and what needs to be optimized. It's not the same for each one. And we think we've really met that highest standard, which is no one should experience slowness during a test. And we've maintained that for the last few months, even though we had our highest peak in May. We had 70,000 students tested in a 4-week span, and there weren't any reports whatsoever of slowness. So it's something where you have to have continued diligence, and we've had a consultation now to keep that going, and we feel confident we can in the future. We've added these features, info, copy, notes, and so on. Info is an auditing feature. We always had audit capabilities in TE, but we're making more of it available on the user interface. So, for example, you can know if someone has inserted a record, whether it's a test record or demographics or whatever, who did it, when they did it, how they did it. So they could have done it by manual data entry or scanning or import and so on. So that's what the info button does for any record. We introduced a copy wizard, and this is for students that are attending more than one site. So they've already been attending class at site A, but now they want to go to site B. So instead of manually entering the information that they have from one site to another, use a copy wizard to bring that all over. And it also works as a transfer wizard. So if it was a mistake that they were put in site B, you can do the copy and then delete their site A information, and it works just like a transfer. We had a notes field just because people want to leave a note about a particular record so that others can know about what happened. So perhaps a student was missing for a month because they had to take care of a sick child. Whatever it may be, there's all sorts of reasons that you need to have annotations about a student, and the notes field lets you do that. We have a lot of schema customization, so you can set which columns appear in listers, how they're sorted, a number of different things. And those schemas now can be shared with others. You can import and export them. You can rename them, delete them, and so on. And then we've also just had a growing user base. I think all the states that use TE and eTests, there's about 35 of them, have increased the number of students using the system. And we're also welcoming Tennessee because they came on with the statewide adoption just in the last few months. So they've been gearing up to using eTests online, gone through a lot of training, and then they'll be fully using it starting July 1st. So those are just the highlights from the last year, where we're going. James already talked about WCS. This is just to say that it was already integrated in the old TOPSpro, but we hadn't fully integrated into TE. So that's what we've been working on and is now ready. So in July, anyone who wants to use WCS in TOPSpro Enterprise will be able to. And now I'm going to skip around a little. I'm going to go to the middle and talk about the new regional level to TE hierarchy. So TOPS Enterprise has always had site, agency, state levels. But we're entering the new world of WIOA, and we know that it's no longer that adult ed is in a silo, that we're partners with all the other titles, and that we're going to have to have a new regional level. So between agency and state, there'll be a region. Okay, and I haven't seen a diagram for this yet, but I'm imagining a hub and spoke kind of system where we have a one-stop in the center being the hub, and we have spokes going to adult ed or community college or the workforce partners and so on. So adult ed is just one of these partners, but we're not existing by ourselves anymore, we're sharing data with all of them. So the regional level becomes very important, and that'll be one of the big changes in TE. And there's going to be other changes with enhancing TE database for WIOA. That's the last bullet. I'm going to skip ahead and then come back to this slide. So that'll make it easier. So when we talk about getting ready for WIOA interoperability, we know that the performance measures don't come in effect until a year from now, so that'll be July 1st, 2016. But we want to obviously get as ready as we can before then. And one of the things we have to be looking forward with, especially in terms of the regional level, is co-enrollments, because we know that a student can enroll in adult ed, and they can also enroll at a one-stop or elsewhere, and this has to be known across the system, across the region. So that'll be the advantage of having a region, is being able to share that kind of information. But the other kind of things we have to do is manage common IDs. It's not going to work well if the adult ed site has one ID for the student and one stop has another. So this is one of the big challenges that we'll be facing all of us as we go forward, and we don't know the answers to that yet, and they'll probably be answered on a state-by-state or region-by-region basis. I don't know yet how that will come about, but it's something that we're looking forward to in already having an answer for and having a common ID. And we look forward, well, I have it here, piloting, no, I'll go back to piloting. But we know that we'll have to be able to exchange data, and common IDs will be very important for that. So we go back now. So on the second bullet now, barriers to employment. Why is that important? Well, one of the things that becomes important with WIOA, I'm going to read just one statement here. It increases the focus on serving the most vulnerable workers, low-income adults, and youth who have limited skills, lack of work experience, and face other barriers to economic success. So that's what we're talking about, barriers to enrollment, and there's a list that TOPS already collects some of this, but some of it's new. So for example, we haven't been collecting ex-offenders, who's homeless, who's been in foster care, who's a seasonal farm worker, or long-term unemployed. So these are examples of barriers to employment that you're not only going to have to collect to report that you're serving people from these populations, but you're also going to have to report on their skill gains. You're actually going to have to show what kind of success they've had in your program. So it's a very important new feature, and even though this doesn't go into effect until a year from now, we're adding those barriers to employment indicators in TE in July. And the reason for that is so you have a chance to start collecting that information because it'll be part of your planning process. If if you want to know who you're serving now as you plan for WIOA next year, you'll be able to get that information from TE. And so now I want to skip to the bullet on piloting co-enrollment. As your states are coming on to your systems, a lot of you are hopefully, some of you or all of you, are doing some minor pilots. You know, how are we going to do this? How are we cooperating with our one-stops? How are we going to share data? If you don't have my contact information, you can ask me afterwards or get it from others, but contact me, Richard Ackerman, and if you're interested in doing some sort of pilot with TE on a small scale to see how we can do these sort of things, we're interested in that. We're also working this year on a brand new interface for eTests online, and this is not specifically to do with WIOA this time, but for a couple of reasons. One of them is the new test series that we know is coming. And this is what Linda was talking about when she said that we'll have test items now with long passages that have multiple items associated with them. So we now need to have different kind of, it's going to look very similar to the existing structure, but there'll be an indication of that you're on an item that's associated with this display, and 3 more or 4 more just like this. You'll see what I'm talking about when we have prototypes to show you along the year, but just know that we're one of the changes we're making is the user interface for the new test series. Another reason we're doing this is for use of eTests on multiple devices. I have a slide for that next, so I'll speak about that in a moment. So I think I've covered everything there. So what do I mean by multiple devices? First, let me back up and give you a little history. eTests is using Silverlight, which I don't know how many of you heard that word before and what you think good or bad of it, but it was what Microsoft championed, and we do like Microsoft tools, and that's what we use, and I have a lot of good things to say about Microsoft. And I don't want to badmouth Silverlight because actually it's a pretty good product, but what happened about 3 or 4 years ago is that Apple and Amazon and Google and Microsoft all decided that the protocol of the future is HTML5. And so while Silverlight was on Microsoft's roadmap, and we started with that because that was the future, they changed their minds to get in line with all the other tech titans. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing in the end, but it means that we have to adapt and we have to push Silverlight to the side. And one of the advantages to that is by going to HTML5 is that we can become more compatible with other devices. And I'll tell you, there isn't a month or a week that goes by where I don't get an email that says, we just bought a bunch of Chromebooks, or we just bought a bunch of iPads, eTest compatible. And we had to say, well, no, not entirely. And part of that is because of Silverlight, and part of it is because we also have to think about these tablets, these other devices, and what their size of the screens are, and so on. And we have to adapt our test items so that they display properly on these other devices. So we do want to make our product compatible with Chromebooks and iPads and other devices, Windows and Apple, and even touchscreens and tablets. So this is one of the things that we're working on in this program here, and we'll be ready a year from now. Any questions about that? Okay, I talked about WIOA interoperability. Most of you already know this, but just as a reminder that TOPSpro Enterprise is unique in that using CASAS, you have access to this data system that gives you data at the local, the regional, and the statewide data, statewide basis. It's aggregated and disaggregated. All the data is auditable down to the student level. Skills and performances can be compared at all levels, and programs can be monitored in real time over the internet. So those, a lot of features that people are looking for and don't realize it's already there. So it's there if you're using TOPSpro Enterprise, and we'll be obviously enhancing for all the new requirements coming from WIOA. This is also just a reminder, you've heard already that we have these high school equivalency exams in TE. We also have all the NRS approved pre and post tests, CASAS, BEST, GAIN, and TAVE. So even though you might be giving other assessments, your state may have a menu-based system, you can put these other scores in TE and become part of the federal table reports that you make. which incidentally will probably change. We don't know yet where we go and how that will change. And I'd just let you know that I have sessions in the Summer Institute. One of them is on just an overview of TOPSpro Enterprise and eTests Online. Actually, I have 5 sessions of all. It's only showing 2 of them. Just look in the back of your Summer Institute program, look for my name, and you'll see all 5 sessions that I'm doing, in case you want more information on any of this. We have also a Q&A for anyone who's using TE. Probably not if you want to go day-to-day basis, but if you want to come to that session, we have a Q&A session as well.